Hi, I'm Mike. I'm going to talk about what it means to take a moral inventory, step 4 in AA. To begin with, in step 1, we admit that we're powerless over those things that separate us from God, whether that be our addiction or whatever it might be. Step 2, we came to believe that God can restore us to sanity, can take us from where we are to where we want to be. And step 3 basically is making a decision to turn our lives and wills over to God in order for Him to help us through the process of getting from where we are to where we want to be. In between there are the rest of the steps. Steps 4 through 12 are going to get us from where we are to where we want to be. Step 4, this inventory, is where we look at what we have and what we have had going on in our heads for our entire lives. And we're going to take inventory of that. We're going to take a searching inventory, which is fact-finding. We're going to take a fearless inventory, which is fact-facing. And we're going to take a moral inventory. Now, the first thing we think of when we think of the word moral is all the bad things we've done, the terrible things we've done to others. But it doesn't say immoral. It says moral. And moral only means truth, an honest assessment. Another misconception is that we're going to write down our life story in this step, but we're not writing down our life story. We're writing down our life story only in regards to those things that have affected our relationships with God and others and ourselves. And those things being flawed thinking processes, which basically are made up of 3 things: resentments, fears, and guilt and remorse for things, wrongs that we've done to others. So this is just a basic analogy of how to do this. We're going to start out just 3 columns on a piece of paper. First column, we're going to write down person, persons, or institutions, say employer or church or whatever, the things that have hurt us and caused us to have these resentments. And we're going to start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. Then we're going to go to the second column, back up to the top, and we're going to say, what did this person do to cause us to have this resentment? And then we're going to work our way down, and then we're going to go up to the top of another column, start the third column, and say, how did that affect my life, as far as my self-esteem, my sex life, my however that affects you in a negative way, that's causing you to react and act out in a way that you don't want to. So the purpose that we're doing this is, the purpose of this whole program is so that we can grow in our understanding and effectiveness with God, with ourselves, and with others. This is the growing and understanding stage. We're going to get a true assessment of what's been going on in our heads. So let's talk about the number 1 offender, it seems to be, which is resentments. Resentments. The word resentment is made up of 2 words. Re means again, and resentment, which root word basically means to feel. So it means to feel something again. Um, Example, say if you have an argument with a friend or your spouse or whatever, and maybe you've both said some things, did some things that hurt the other. So say your friend or your spouse said something that hurt you, that was wrong. At that moment, you feel hurt. You may feel anger. And that's on them at that moment. But say later on in the evening, you go home, or you're not with that person, and you go through that in your head again. And you feel pain or hurt again. Now, at this point, it's not on them. It's on you if you are feeling hurt, feeling pain again the second time, or the third time, or next week, or 2 years, or 3 years later, which is what we do. We, especially addicts, we have, actually we have in our head, it's like a resentment machine. We get up in the morning, we pour our coffee, and some of us, I know myself, I'd pour my coffee and I'd pour a shot of Jameson in there and some Bailey's Irish cream, and I'd sit around and for an hour or so drinking that coffee, and I'd think about, what she did last night hurt me, and or what that guy did to me last week, what boss did a year ago, and and I'll run that thing all day long, and waste a lot of your life doing that. But that's what we do. And when we come to the program, this is an important thing to understand. We could still get up in the morning and pour our coffee. I mean, we may not pour that drink in there anymore because we stopped drinking. But we still turn that machine on because our thought processes are still the same. We haven't changed. So that's the purpose of this program. We're going to look at these things. One of my favorite examples of this, I think, is from a Joe and Charlie tape. He talks about a football game. Wide receivers going out for the ball, and the cornerback just clobbers him, just knocks him down to the ground, and he's twisted up. And well, one or two things are going to happen. The guy's going to get up, brush himself off, and get back in the game, or they're going to replace him with somebody else. But the game's going to go on. The game's going to go on just like life goes on. Well, up in the announcer's booth, there's a guy, he's got what's called a playback, instant replay machine. It's a resentment machine. That's what it is. And the game's going on maybe for another 5 minutes, and hey, let's go back and take a look at that play again, and there we go. There's the cornerback going up, and he's just smashing this guy to the ground again, and then my favorite is, hey, let's look at it in slow motion. We do that also. But the game's going on, life's going on, but we're still running this instant replay of what happened to us, and we're wasting our lives because that's what we do. So meanwhile, we got going forward in reverse. We got this guy slamming off the ground, and we're missing life. We're missing the game. So that's what we do. Sometimes we have a bad day. Nothing bad happens to us. On those days, we still have our resentment machine with us, but there's nothing to record. So as an addict or as an alcoholic, what we do is we record what they're thinking, and then at night we go home and replay that, and we make ourselves sick again. After we do resentments and replay them enough time, two things happen. One thing is that we start to resent ourselves for being that way, and after a while that'll turn into self-pity, which is one of the sickest things that can happen to a human being. And the other thing is we also replay these things over and over because we can't live with ourselves if we've done things to people, and some of the things we've done on our drunken sprees or out doing drugs, some of the things we don't ever want those things to be found out by any other person. We want to shove those things down so that they never see the light of day. So we use our resentment machine to go over these things, and eventually we start to shift the blame from ourselves to the other person so that we can live with ourselves. We're doing a con job is what happens. And that just actually just causes more tension, and it's going to come out eventually. So we want to deal with this stuff, because if all that stuff crap is filling our heads, then there's no room for God to get in and to work in our minds and in our lives and to bring the good things in our lives that we want. So what we're going to find out is it's not really the person that causes us to feel this way. You could have replaced that person with anybody else, and you're still going to feel that way. It's not really what they did that causes us to be the way we are. What it comes down to is where we are in our relationship with God determines how we're going to react to any situation. So in order for that to happen, we need to get this stuff down, confess it, and so that we can be healed, so that God can work in our lives and in our minds to give us the things that we want to have in our lives. One last thing, the big book tells us we do this to the best of our ability, which is all we can do, right? We can't do any more than what we can do. And the reason it says that is because when we move on to the next step, we're going to go over this again, what we put down in our inventory with God. We're going to go over it with ourselves. And then we're going to take it to another person. We do that for a couple of reasons, which is what we'll talk about in step 5. But one of the reasons is, just wanted to bring it out, is because to the best of our ability is, we're con men. You can't be an alcoholic or drug addict without being a liar, a cheater, a manipulator, and a con man. And the biggest con we do is on ourselves. We have to make ourselves feel good, look good to ourselves in order for us to even live and get through a day. So we do it to the best of our ability, because we're going to take it to someone else who can look at this objectively and maybe shed some more light and help us to see what was actually going on, because we can't really see ourselves as good as others can see us. So that's what we got for our 4th step. And well, God bless you. It's not that hard. It gets better, believe me.